A cave in Spain has offered up evidence of dark ancient rituals involving human bones and potential cannibalism in the Neolithic. The new study, entitled As Above, So Below, Deposition, Modification and Reutilization of Human Remains at Marmoles Cave, Cueva de los Marmoles, southern Spain, 4000 to 1000 BCE, was published in the journal PLOS 1. The Cueva de los Marmoles in Priego de Córdoba, Spain, has been the focus of extensive archaeological research, revealing a fascinating history of human use spanning several millennia. The use of caves for funerary purposes is a widespread cultural phenomenon, with examples found across all inhabited continents. In Western Mediterranean farming societies, including Andalusia, Spain, collective burials in natural caves, hypogea, and megalithic chambers have been discovered. The practice of using natural caves as necropolises began in the early Neolithic period around the 6th millennium BC and continued for thousands of years. Cueva de los Marmoles is a natural cave located in Sierra de los Judíos in the province of Córdoba. It has a rich history of prehistoric occupation dating back to the late Neolithic, Copper and Bronze Ages. The cave's first archaeological excavations date back to 1934, with findings indicating a funerary chamber and human remains. Between the 1960s and 1980s, the cave attracted amateur and clandestine excavators, resulting in the removal of artifacts and human remains that were eventually incorporated into the Municipal History Museum of Priego de Córdoba. In the 1980s, more systematic archaeological work took place, revealing an early Neolithic occupation, with evidence of cereals dating back to the last quarter of the 6th millennium BC. In 2018, new archaeological work was conducted at the site, including a re-excavation of previously explored sectors and the systematic sampling of sediments for archaeobotanical analysis. The study aimed to provide a comprehensive understanding of the human remains found in the cave and address questions related to its funerary use, as well as the presence of anthropic modifications on the remains, that is to say, the manipulation of human bones for ritual purposes and the chronological context of its use. The study at Cueva de los Marmoles had several objectives. The researchers aimed to estimate the minimum number of individuals, MNI, and assess the demographic distribution of the deposited individuals in terms of age and sex. The study aimed to evaluate the presence and type of anthropic modifications on the human remains throughout anatomical preservation, spatial distribution, and macroscopic and microscopic analysis. Radiocarbon dating was conducted to determine the chronological phases of human deposition in the cave. In terms of key findings, the radiocarbon dating of 7 samples from Cueva de los Marmoles revealed human deposition across at least 3 millennia, from the late Neolithic to the late Bronze Age, occurring in 3 distinct phases. Despite this extended time of use, the study estimated a relatively low minimum number of individuals. This suggests sporadic but continued funerary use of the cave over time. Demographically, the sample showed a lack of specific distribution in terms of sex or age at death, indicating there was no rigid selection based on age. This suggests a communal rather than specific treatment of individuals, according to researchers. Analysis of bone modifications revealed the presence of cut and chop marks, primarily on postcranial remains. These marks suggested intentional actions relating to the disarticulation and/or excarnation. Fresh fractures were the most common type of lesion and were often associated with medullary canal modifications, indicating an attempt to access the marrow after crushing long bones. In short, were they cannibalistically harvesting and/or eating the bone marrow of the dead? These practices were consistent with other prehistoric contexts in the region. Several challenges and limitations were acknowledged, however, in interpreting the findings. The cave had been explored by amateurs and looters over the years, potentially altering the original archaeological and anthropological record, affecting completeness and spatial distribution of the remains. The cave's unique microenvironment, including temperature and humidity, could have affected the preservation and appearance of lesions on the bones also. Traces of carnivore damage or rodent gnawing were identified on some fragments, which could have influenced estimates of timings and mechanism of lesions. Distinguishing between anthropic and taphonomic or deliberate and incidental causes of lesions was challenging, and there was a risk of both false positives and false negatives. That said, the study of Cueva de los Marmoles provided valuable insights into prehistoric funerary practices in the region. The cave's extended use, relatively low MNI, and heterogeneous treatment of remains suggests complex and evolving cultural practices related to death and burial. The findings highlight the interaction between the living and the dead in this ancient society, with evidence of practices such as disarticulation, excarnation, and potential modification of human remains for various purposes, including possible cannibalism. While there are interpretive challenges existing due to the cave's history and other factors, the research sheds light on the cultural and behavioural significance of this archaeological site within the broader context of prehistoric Andalusia and further afield. In summary, Cueva de los Marmoles provides a window into the multifaceted world of ancient funerary practices, offering a glimpse into the beliefs, rituals and behaviours of the ancient people who used the cave for thousands of years. One of the central aspects discussed in the research was the practicality of using natural caves as burial sites. It pointed out that caves offered practical solutions to several challenges related to disposing of the deceased. These challenges included concerns about the smell, visibility and hygiene associated with handling corpses. Natural caves provided a convenient and secluded environment where these practical issues could be addressed. However, it was suggested that looking at this phenomenon solely from a practical perspective might be overly simplistic. There are also powerful symbolic reasons why caves may be used to store the dead. The report delves into the symbolism surrounding this use of caves for burial. Caves, with their perpetual darkness and underground locations, held a unique significance as liminal spaces or entrances to the otherworld or underworld. They were considered ideal resting places, frozen in time and devoid of the typical natural markers of the passage of time, such as seasonal changes and daily light cycles. This, combined with the presence of human remains, turned caves into significant landmarks with deep cultural connotations. They became associated with concepts like ancestor veneration, community membership, cultural tradition, and memory. In this sense, the choice of caves as burial sites was not merely practical, but deeply rooted in the cultural and symbolic fabric of the society. The paper also draws parallels between the internal structure of burial chambers, whether natural or constructed, and the layout of houses used by the living community. This suggests that caves designated for burials played a role in maintaining a connection between the living and the dead. Death did not mean members of the community were relieved of their role, they transcended into a new position. The deceased individuals in these caves held the social role of ancestors. This concept highlights the notion that the dead were not entirely separated from the living, but continued to be a part of the community in a different form. These cultural elements may have varied among different societies, but the proximity to and interaction with the physical remains of the dead were essential for preserving and passing down the collective memory of the community. The study further discussed the practices observed at Cueva de los Marmoles in the broader context of the Iberian Peninsula during late prehistory. It suggests the possibility of shared ideologies among different societies in the region, where the human body served as a central element for preserving the collective memory of the community. The use of caves for burials appears to be part of a broader cultural and symbolic tradition. The study also raises questions about the purpose behind the manipulation of remains at Cueva de los Marmoles over time. While patterns of bone fractures might initially suggest cannibalistic practices, the scarcity of cut marks challenges this explanation. Instead, the authors propose the concept of secondary treatment of remains. This would involve the careful selection of specific remains, their modification, including the possible consumption of marrow, and their deliberate placement in the cave. This interpretation aligns with the idea that these practices held a deeper cultural and symbolic meaning beyond mere consumption. The paper concluded by emphasizing the importance of considering the use of caves for collective funerary deposits within the broader context of megalithic collective burials, passage graves and chambered tombs found in Western Europe. It suggests that while the natural burial caves may have been perceived differently from the constructed megalithic tombs, it is essential to explore the regional and temporal variations of how these burial spaces were culturally understood and employed. It is worth mentioning that the practice of bone manipulation, potentially as ancestor worship rituals, is not limited to Spain and was widespread. There is evidence that this took place as far away as in what is now England, specifically but not limited to the impressive West Kennet Long Barrow in Marlborough, Wiltshire. Excavations have revealed that the barrow was used as a communal tomb, with at least 46 people buried there over a 1,000-year period. Some cremations were also discovered alongside grave goods, including pottery, beads and some stone implements such as a dagger, dated to between 3000 and 2600 BC. The chambers contain the remains of a cross-section of the community, men and women, and from the very young to the elderly. Few complete skeletons were found intact, and it appears that the bones were rearranged or sometimes removed altogether as part of ritual ancestor worship practices. Mysteriously, 4,000 years ago the tomb was deliberately filled in and the entrance blocked by large stones. Returning to the study, in summary, it highlighted the varied nature of using natural caves for funerary practices during the Neolithic period in this part of what is now Spain. It underscores the interplay of practical considerations, complex symbolism, and social dynamics in shaping these burial customs. Additionally, it called for a broader perspective that includes the cultural and symbolic traditions of different societies in the region and beyond, and the transition from natural cave deposition to artificial caves in the form of megalithic tombs. But that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, share, and most importantly subscribe, and you can also support the channel on Subscribestar via the link in the description or via YouTube Super Thanks. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.